My hope for you and for all of us over the course of the next several days is that we will in fact leave with many, many answers, as well as a lot of questions that we can go forth and solve together.
The world is changing and evolving at an incredibly fast pace. Population shifts, economic development, urbanization, and the effects of climate change represent one of today's greatest challenges for society.
The Pentagon's referred to climate change as an instability accelerant. CNA MAB also called it a threat multiplier. In Syria, 800,000 farmers were forced to migrate to urban centers in search of non-existent jobs after a 2-year drought there ending last year.
In Bangladesh alone, the water level rise over the next 20 years will force 20 million people to relocate. Climate change risks are real and growing every day, and we cannot afford to ignore them. The greatest dangers lie in being unprepared.
What is the role of conflict and peace building, and how does it fit in? Resiliency of what? To what? For whom?
Water efficiency in the context of commercial and industrial operations is actually water infrastructure that is a lot more resistant and a lot more resilient in the context of climate change than any water treatment plant we can build.
Why the private sector should care about the index. What it does is actually provide the private sector opportunities to see where investment can be made and risk reduction can occur at the same time. We have to keep in mind that no matter how smart we think we are, nature always wins.
ND Gain is one of these kinds of indicators. It's attempting to it gathers information and delivers it to users with an emphasis on the private sector, but with application to many other sectors, including the public sector and non-governmental organizations.
What we found is that at current adaptation rates, it will take 100 years for the poorest countries to reach the point of climate adaptation capacity that the developed world has already attained.
The economics of climate change are going to be very important. I mean, it is not only how you are affected, but what do you do? What kind of policies are implemented to face the impacts of climate change in terms of the floodings, in terms of the droughts?
Public funds will not cover adaptation to the extent needed. Okay? So that leaves the private sector. The public sector can provide the commitment and the frameworks to mobilize and to enable the private sector to come in where they're wanted, where they're needed, and where they can make a return. And that intersection, I think, is where ND Gain comes together.
But the question of energy, environment, and climate change, which I know you are focused on, but which I would like to say is a struggle now between what we can afford in the short term and what we can endure in the long term.
And the disruptions, frankly, are not all due to climate change. So let's be really clear. This is not a climate change strategy. It's a risk mitigation strategy that includes risks that are driven by, accelerated by, or exacerbated by climate change.
Mitigation versus adaptation is dead. We know we need both. The question is how much, what impact, how not to throw away trillions of dollars on schemes that have no chance of working, both in the adaptation side and on the mitigation side. Prioritize, rationalize, and do it smartly.